Greetings fellow mammals, a longer episode today because we will be going over every single sidearm currently in the game in one video. You will understand why I chose to do it this way bit by bit, but if you are just here for one particular weapon, please use the chapters to navigate around. Two more additional notes before we can start, so I don't have to repeat myself constantly. A. Sidearms shouldn't be ranked on the same scale as primaries, for obvious reasons, so instead they will be ranked against each other. And for some reference points, in order to reach S tier as a sidearm, you would need to be able to replace your primary with it without making you feel like you are massively handicapping yourself. And it would be F tier if I would rather resort to just stabbing the enemy instead. That is the same scale I used for 2042, it worked great there, and the deagles certainly fit that S tier description. We will see if Battlefield 6 has something similar to offer yet. And B, you should try to always keep in mind what sidearms are for. They are usually backup weapons and you normally only use them when you have emptied your primary or are being rushed. Very rarely do you use them for anything else. That scenario does imply though that the ranges that are going to be relevant for pistols are much shorter. Generally I would argue anything beyond 35 meters, if not closer, can be disregarded completely. So just keep that in mind while we are looking at the graphs later. Oh, and because I obviously had to record background footage for this video, expect to see a lot of dying. Because guess what? If you're running around with a pistol as your main weapon, you will pretty much lose 9 out of 10 encounters against full-sized guns. That's just how it is in this game. But now, without further ado, let's start this off with the P18. The P18 or the starter pistol comes with a damage profile that starts at 25 up to 9 meters, then drops to 20 up to 21 meters, then 16.7 to 36 meters, then 14.3 to 75 meters, and then 12.5 beyond. That translates into a BTK of 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. With a maximum achievable fire rate of 400 RPM, that leads to a time to kill of 450, 600, 750, 900 and 1050 milliseconds. Already not a great start, and that's with hitting every shot. Well, maybe headshots can help. Let's see. Regular headshots only change something about the BTK when you land 3 of them. Good luck with that on a pistol. With hollow point ammo we can get the same drop with 2 headshots already, which is an improvement but not a massive one. Although we will get to the core issue now. Let's take a look at the loadouts. The first thing to note, and that applies to all sidearms, is that our budget has been cut down from the usual 100 to only 60 points. And since you cannot unequip irons, ammo, magazine or barrel, in reality you will always have 25 points spent already. So that leaves us with an actual budget of 35 points. That is an issue and honestly one of the first things I would want to see changed in a future balance patch. But I'll get more into that throughout these build sections. Now, the first thing I want to note, and for me personally that applies to all sidearms as well, is that if you use these pistols in ADS, you simply cannot see anything with these iron sights. That's just how it is with this type of game design. So unless you are planning to only use hipfire, a sight will be mandatory. That's another 5 points down, so now we only have 30 bucks to spend. Let's take a look at the options we have here. For the muzzle we get 4 measly choices. The flash hider and the brake both for 10 points and the 2 suppressors for 20 and 30 points. Actually, let me cut that down to 3 choices because the 30 point suppressor is plain stupid. Why is it even here? Well, because the suppressor for 20 comes with a hipfire reduction. Oh no. So the devs allow you to spend 30 instead in order to not have that. Great, right? No. You see, the basic hipfire stat is at 54 right now, and with the 30 point suppressor it doesn't change. Awesome, but it also means we have no more budget for anything else. Not so awesome. Even if you will get rid of the sight again, there is nothing for 5 points that would help with hipfire, so even that changes jack shit. The stupid thing about this is that if you use the 20 point suppressor, the hipfire stat drops to 46. But now we have 10 points left, and since the 20 point suppressor reduction is equal to the red laser increase, if we buy that one we are back to 54. But, and that's the kicker here, we could also afford the green one. And with that we are up to 62. So we do get the suppression and we get better hipfire than with the 30 point suppressor, hence making that one completely useless. And now a few people might argue, but you can be spotted from the laser. And while in general I already think that is an overblown argument anyway, once again, keep the context in mind. This is on your pistol. You are not running around with this. You get it out, deal with the situation at hand, and then you put it away. The laser has to help with that one encounter and then he's gone again. If there is anyone that noticed you because of your pistol laser and not because of the immediate gunfight you are having with their teammate right next to them, then I guess that's on you. Moving on. Despite my line of argumentation just now, this is actually not a build I would recommend, and that's because of the second argumentation. Does a sidearm need to be suppressed in the first place? In most cases where you have to use them, you are probably fucked anyway. Does giving away your position on a minimap for maybe 2 seconds at most during that last standoff really change anything? Generally I would think not. However, avoiding the 3DO reto is still something I would lean towards, just because you can somewhat count on your enemies missing you for those 2 seconds on a minimap, but if they are within 75 meters of you and generally looking into your direction, you will give yourself away to potentially even more hostiles during your last stand, which is not something I would recommend. But that means we could downgrade from the 20-point suppressor to the 10-point flash hider. And now we have 20 points to spend. That gives us a bit more leeway. So let's chat about the magazines real quick. On this weapon we have 17 rounds by default. You could now spend, or rather waste in my opinion, 10 points to get 4 more bullets. And once again I would argue, if you cannot deal with the situation you ended up in with your pistol in your hands with 17 rounds, 21 won't change anything about that. You are probably dead before you emptied half the magazine anyway, let's be honest here. So no, I won't be spending my points here. Let's talk about another place I won't be spending my points. The mag catch. This is supposed to make you reload faster. The problem is that increase in speed is a percentage type buff, and the result you can see here shows you why that is a stupid decision in certain cases. The regular reload takes 1.9 seconds. With the mag catch it takes 1.8. You could argue you aren't even able to notice that difference, but even if you could notice it, when would it ever matter? Again, if you cannot handle a pistol situation with 17 rounds, neither will 21 nor reloading in 0.1 second faster do anything about that. It's a completely useless attachment in my opinion. So let's talk about something that actually helps for a change. The light barrel. And yes, that implies you would be aiming. I've played quite a few rounds with the P18 only, and I gotta say I wasn't convinced at first, but ultimately I really grew to love the light barrel on it. Because if you are aiming in those ranges and you are on target, the most infuriating thing that could happen is missing because of spread. The time to kill is already ass, and if you are skill-wise on point, losing an engagement because of a random factor like spread has to be one of the most annoying experiences you can have in this game. That's why I heavily lean towards using this. And then I spent the last 10 points on a green laser. This is what I would call the all-rounder setup. You get limited stealth from the flash hider, you get a sight, you get good ADS accuracy from the light barrel, and you get pretty good hipfire from the laser. This build can do everything, at least a little. If you don't care about being spotted, you could also exchange the flash hider for the break and get an even easier ADS build. It does feel better that way, but from my perspective I didn't really have an issue doing the same thing with the flash hider, and keeping that minimal stealth was more important to me. I don't want to draw even more attention towards me when I'm in my weakest state. And before we go over my other 2 setups now, I want to quickly circle back to the headshot ammo. If we strip the gun again and put on the hollow point rounds, we are already on a pretty tight budget, and since you won't land headshots from the hip reliably, you will need to aim. So a sight is mandatory too. And now we are stuck in a dilemma. Either you use the break, so you can keep your red dot on their heads more easily, but that means you can't afford the light barrel, so you will likely just miss a few shots just because of the spread. Or you do the opposite, which means it's a bit harder to land headshots, but at least if you do, they are actually hitting. Whatever route you pick, you are now left with 5 points. And there is nothing useful you can afford with that. The only thing you can put those into is the mag catch. So in conclusion, a headshot build kinda sucks. Honestly, that should have been clear from the start, because in a close range panic situation you are not landing 2 or 3 headshots anyway. But now let's talk about the other 2 actually viable options. This one leans into hipfire as much as possible, so the setup is pretty straightforward. You either put a 20-point green laser on it for absolute maximum hipfire accuracy, or you try the 20-point light laser combo, which is only slightly worse, but because of the integrated flashlight the accuracy resets faster between shots, and of course you also get the blinding factor. And since this is a weapon for chaotic moments, adding a flashlight into the mix that could potentially irritate your enemy for a brief second might just be enough to get the upper hand. That's why I actually prefer this option over the green laser. I then spent the rest of the 15 points on the flash hider and a sight, because if you can afford to aim, you still should. It is after all more accurate than hipfire. And now the last setup. This one felt best for my recording sessions, and it should be obvious why. However, what I was doing there is not what you would usually do with these weapons, so my enjoyment is not really related to actual regular usage in this case. Still, I figured some of you might want to see it anyway. 20-point suppressor, so you can stay completely hidden even during a last stand, and a light barrel, because due to the suppressor hipfire decrease you will need to aim with this setup anyway, so you might as well make it accurate. And the last 5 points are for a sight, of course. Oh, and before I forget it, a few words on my choice there. I have picked the ROS on all of these loadouts because it has the best view frame while keeping the zoom low. And because of its round shape, you can actually aim with its border and not the actual red dot. That allowed me to spam it even more because I just centered the target in the window and not actually tried to put my red dot on them. Worked flawlessly for me, and it's also just one of the good sights anyway. And these are all the loadouts I have for this one. Ranking time. Since this is the first pistol we are ranking today, this is going to be our baseline for the other ones. So let me go over the end product sheet. The P18 is a rather spammy, low damage pistol that definitely was not fun to use as a primary. However, with the right build you can get a pretty accurate weapon either in hipfire or ADS, or kind of both. Headshots don't really work and you also can't really force them to. The damage drop-off is quite punishing, and in general the time to kill is so slow that you will lose pretty much every encounter if you and your enemy with his primary are on equal ground. So all in all, even with the best possible setup for your preferred playstyle, the base stats of this weapon are so underdeveloped you still barely stand a chance. And I guess you could argue that that is the perfect balancing for sidearms, but I beg to differ. If any of you have played Battlefield 1, you know what we lost. And honestly, I'd rather have my Mars Automatic, Bulldog or Obras pistol back than use any of these. But it is what it is. So, P18, D tier. Gotta leave some room towards the bottom. Notes for the parents? Well, if you allowed your child to carry toys for 100 bucks, like the big boys, instead of 60, it would probably move up a grade. But the base level genetics it received from you are just too Saarländisch to lift it any higher. So would I use this pistol? No. Splendid. Moving on to the next one. The GGH-22. Before we dive into the graphs, if you listen to the last section about the P18, this is the same thing, but worse. In every way. So if you already didn't like the P18, you might want to skip ahead a few chapters to the ES 5.7. For the rest that is still here, let's analyze what exactly makes this pistol so shitty. Because the damage model, for example, is actually technically better than the one on the P18. We are still starting out with 25 points of damage up to 9 meters, but then we drop to 21.5 up to 21, 17.7 up to 75 and 14.3 beyond. I'll throw the P18 line on here too, just for comparison. So just from looking at this, you can say that this pistol is better beyond 36 meters. Now, who remembers what I said in the intro? Yeah. The BTK graph obviously looks similar, going from 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, and now we get to the crippling portion. A rate of fire of 360 rounds per minute. That's a time to kill of 500 milliseconds in the first range. Half a fucking second. For reference, the slowest killing primary in this game is the M39 EMR. That one sits at 467 milliseconds. This pistol loses against a DMR in close range. Do I need to say more? Yeah, didn't think so. There is one teeny tiny little upside over the P18 though, and that comes with this minor increase in damage and is related to the headshots. As you can see, with regular ammo we get a mid-range drop in the second and third step with 2 headshots and then a full drop across all steps with 3. With hollow point we can get that full drop with 2 headshots instantly. Now I talked about this for the other pistols, so I won't repeat myself too much, but simply put, you will not land those headshots with this weapon, and you certainly can't afford to anyway, because if you miss, you are done for. Absolute non-recommendation to use this ammo type. I won't even show a build for it later because it would just be a giant waste of time. So now the actually viable setups, at least somewhat. First things first again, the iron sights are shit and 15 rounds should be enough to handle a pistol moment. If not, you are fucked anyway. Still, I wanted to briefly mention the costs here. You pay 15 points for 5 more rounds. Okay. Not great, but okay. But then you could spend 10 more for 2 additional bullets. Yes, 2. What the actual fuck, guys? 2 bullets for 10 points? Egal. So, ROS sight on this thing, and then we are back to the basic approach from earlier. Flash hider or break, depending on how much you actually care about staying hidden. Light barrel, so your bullets actually land where you are aiming. And then 10-point green laser, because that just perfectly fits in the budget and makes the hipfire pretty good. The jack of all trades setup. This weapon is still shit though, don't get me wrong. Next one. For this we go full hipfire, so either 20-point green laser or 20-point laser light combo. I prefer the latter for the blinding effect. 10 points for the flash hider again, and a sight of course. One more. This one has a 20-point suppressor and a 20-point light barrel, so you should only really ADS fire with this loadout. But at least you stay completely hidden this way, which should make it easier to catch your pursuer off guard. And now it's finally time to rank this abomination. If you couldn't tell, I hate this thing. Obviously this sucked massive schlong when I used it as a primary, but even in its intended form of usage, it is just so painfully awful. Yes, the BTK is better beyond 35 meters compared to the P18, but when in God's name does that ever matter? What does matter is the horrendously slow time to kill. And one more thing I didn't even mention up until this point is the recoil. It's not massive or anything, but it has this annoying pull to the right. The P18 is just pretty much straight up. So not only is this one just worse stat-wise, it also feels much shittier to control while spamming than the P18. It's simply annoying to use on top of already being dog shit anyway. And therefore the GGH22 is in E tier. Next. The ES 5.7 tried to approach this issue from the other angle. Instead of better damage but lower rate of fire like the GGH, this pistol went for worse damage and a higher rate of fire. To be exact, the damage profile looks like this. 20 points up to 9 meters, 17.7 up to 21 meters, 15 up to 36, 14.3 up to 75, and then 12.5 until infinity. The resulting bullet to kill graph then has steps for 5, 6, 7, 7 again, and 8. And the increased fire rate I mentioned before of 450 RPM then leads to a time to kill of 533, 667, 800, 800 again, and 933 milliseconds. Yes, that is even slower than the last one. And not only is it slower, assuming you land all your shots, you also need to land more of them for this worse result. Fantastic. Do I even want to look at the headshot graphs? Ah, fuck it. Here we go. This should look familiar by now. Normal headshots drop for the second and third range if you land 2 and drop fully if you land 3. Hollow point ammo makes it drop 1 full step across all ranges with 2 already. Is this worth it for the third time? No. Can you afford them with a logical build? Also no. What are we picking then? Again, 3 setups just like before. This first one is the balanced approach. Sight, flash hider, light barrel, 10-point green laser. Once more, you could switch for the break instead of the flash hider, but you really don't need it and the Dorito of Doom is an issue. The second one is full hipfire, so 20-point laser light combo just like on the other ones for the additional confusion factor. You can of course also just opt for the regular laser, flash hider and sight. And that's that. Last one, the suppressed build. 20 points up, light barrel, sight. That's it. Before we move over to the ranking, I just wanted to address the developers once more. Do you see this extended magazine right here? This costs 35 points. Remember how big our budget was? Correct, 35 points. So you can upgrade from a 20 round pistol to a 30 round pistol. And now you cannot afford a sight, a laser, a flashlight, faster reloads, a recoil brake, a light barrel, obviously no suppressor, and not even a flash hider. So to conclude, you can't see where you are aiming, your bullets won't reliably go where you are aiming, you can't rely on hipfire, and while you are blasting those 30 rounds into the stratosphere, you are giving away your position like a Christmas tree on the fucking town square. Who in the fuck balanced these attachment costs? Is this supposed to be a joke? You do have the backend statistics, right? How many people are actually using this? I'm sure they must be in the dozens, at least. Anyway. Ranking! Right. Well, the recoil is easier to handle than a GGH's, but again, it is worse in every other way. I don't even know what to say anymore. And by the way, 450 clicks per minute is scratching really hard on my comfort level. I know many people don't mind the spam clicking, but I do, and at this speed it's really getting on my nerves, especially for the performance I get out of it. If I have to click this fast for a DMR to achieve peak performance at range, okay, but for a pistol to achieve a time to kill that's longer than half a second, yeah, fuck that. The ES 5.7 is E-. If this thing had a magazine size of 11 or some shit, then it would be F tier instantly. But I am pretty confident in DICE's ability to release an even worse sidearm in the future, so I want to leave some space towards the floor. Now why don't we talk about a pistol for a change that only slightly causes depression? The M45A1. This one opted for slow firing but hard hitting, with a damage model of 33.4 up to 9 meters, 25 up to 21 meters, 20 up to 36, 16.7 up to 54, 14.3 up to 75 and 12.5 beyond. That's a pretty simple BTK graph of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, with a rather slow rate of fire of 327 that comes out as a time to kill of 367, 550, 734, 917, 1101 and 1284 milliseconds. The important one is obviously the first range. This is actually somewhat close to being able to compete with primaries in a tight situation. Still not really, but almost. We do have some other downsides for that, of course, they just can't help themselves it seems, but first let's take the mandatory look at the headshot graphs. By default, all ranges except the first one can drop by 1 bullet if you land 3 headshots. That is completely useless. With hollow point ammo you can get a full drop across all ranges with 2 headshots. Better, but still shit. And still unrealistic for most people. However, since this is a 33.4 damage weapon, that means you can technically 2-shot to the head in the first range. But I dare you to hit those reliably. It won't happen for 99% of players, and we also have other issues, so let's talk about them now. The main problem this gun has is the 7-round magazine. That is really scratching the border to unusable. You cannot afford to miss with this one, like at all. On the other pistols it's not really an issue, but here you will run out of bullets sooner than you'd like. So for the first build we are going to accept that and just run down our regular all-rounder setup. Sight, flash hider, 10-point green laser and light barrel. We can see, we can aim, we can hit, we can hipfire and we stay hidden, but you can't afford to miss. This build tries to fix the ammo issue, but you will see what problems that causes right now, because the 11-round magazine, which by the way is still really small, costs 20 points. That leaves us with 15, and you will still need a sight, so really it's only 10. And now you may decide what's more important to you, a laser, a barrel or a flash hider. For me it would be the last option. This doesn't look too great, but realistically speaking this is probably the best option for a backup weapon. I do have one more though. The Hipfire build, just like earlier. Flash hider, sight, normal barrel, laser light combo or green laser depending on preference, and that's it. Now the ranking. The M45A1 is certainly more fun to use than the last two contestants, but I wouldn't call it good either. It's just that the general sidearm meta is so below the floor that this starts to look appealing. Half the sidearms in 2042 would wipe the floor with this thing, not even speaking about Battlefield 1. But we are here to rank Battlefield 6 weapons and not cross-compare to older titles. So where does it fall in comparison to the other three options so far? I would probably prefer using this over the P18, but really not by a large margin. It's above it, but not far. If the magazine was bigger, or the big magazine cheaper, or I had more points in general so I could use other stuff in tandem with it, then I would easily pick it over the P18. Right now it's kind of on the edge. I still would, just because I prefer its damage profile, but that's about it. So M45A1, usable but not great. C tier. And now we reach the realm of slight enjoyment. The M357 Trade is the first revolver we will be looking at, and it has an equally unique damage model. 50 up to 9 meters, 37.5 up to 21 meters, 27.3 up to 36, 25 up to 75 and 20 beyond. Yes, that means this is the first sidearm that can two-shot up close. The BTK graph looks like this: 2, 3, 4, 4 again, and then 5. With a slow fire rate of 225 rounds per minute, that leads us into a time to kill graph of 267, 533, 800, 800 again, and 1067 milliseconds. So yes, it is equally shitty as the ES 5.7, but only beyond the first range, and you only have to land 3 shots for that shitty time to kill instead of 5. And obviously the actual important thing about this sidearm are the first 9 meters, because a time to kill of 267 milliseconds can easily keep up with a lot of the full auto weapons in this game. So in tight spaces you can actually win a one-on-one with this thing against the primary. Wow, completely new territory in this video. How fun! Not so fun are the headshots, unfortunately. With regular ammo you can observe a slight improvement with 2 and an almost full improvement with 3 headshots. Unfortunately you cannot one-shot to the head. That also doesn't change when you pick hollow point ammo. It does however give you the full drop for the rest with 2 headshots already. But if we look at the ranges, up to 36 meters a regular headshot can do exactly the same. So unless you are able to land 2 headshots with a build that involves hollow point ammo beyond 36 meters, you will not get anything out of it. They really need to do something about headshots in general. It's sad. Anyway, moving on to the build. Yes, singular. It seems creating this damage model has already completely drained the developer's creativity, so here we are, left with an absolutely castrated attachment pool. No muzzle options, no barrel options, and not even the mag catch anymore. There is just nothing here. The only thing you can do is pick a sight, pick a laser or light combo, and then even throw in the fast reload, because why not? And now you might notice that we still have 5 points left. And guess what? You cannot spend them. You literally can't. There's nothing for these 5 points. A problem I never had before. But here we are. Wanting to spend, but not being able to purchase. What an ironic state of affairs for an EA product. Well, let's at least talk about the workaround. Since the hipfire on this gun is already more than great, you might as well downgrade to the 10-point laser and actually use the hollow points. I know, I just explained why they are pretty much useless, but you really don't need the maximum hipfire buff anyway, and maybe the increase in headshot damage will get you more one-shots on already low health targets. Just a random thought. But now let's rank this revolver. We do have one more weapon to go over, of course, but I can already say this is the best option for absolute close range backup. That 2-shot range with that time to kill is primary worthy. Beyond that, certainly not. Going for headshots is also not really rewarded. So this is a weapon you want to get out when someone is really encroaching on your space. For that purpose it works great. Anything besides that? Not so much. But at least because it only has this one build and you want to use it in such a close range, you can basically just hipfire it every time and it will still work. That makes it easier to use and also quicker. For me, the M357 Trade is a B-tier sidearm. In comparison to the rest so far, it's good. Not great, but good. And that brings us to the last option. The M44 is the second revolver at hand, and this one tries to hit even harder for even longer, but also slower. So you could say that this is a high risk, high reward sidearm. And it is also the only skill cannon, so for people that want something that rewards their aim, here you found it. The damage model is even higher than on the last one, going from 66.7 damage up to 9 meters to 60 up to 21 to 33.4 up to 36 and 25 beyond. That means this is a 2, 3 and then 4 shot kill weapon for infinity. With a fire rate of 163 that results in an attempt to kill of 368, 368 again, 736 and 1104 milliseconds. Obviously not as fast as the trait, but still faster than all the pistols, and for 20 meters, not 9. So this 2-shot range covers pretty much every close range encounter possible. But it gets even better with the headshots. How refreshing to say that for once. As you may observe, a headshot even with default ammo does actually do something on this gun. You can one-shot people up to 9 meters. And with 2 headshots you get another reduction for the distance, but we don't really care about that part. The price of this weapon is the hollow point ammo. With this we can extend that one-shot range up to 21 meters. Now that doesn't mean you should only go for headshots, but it does mean if you happen to land one, even on accident, your enemy will be gone instantly. No other sidearm can even try to compare to that potential. And when we look at the attachment options now, you will be pleased to see that we can actually easily afford this ammo type. The creativity has sunk even lower apparently, because now we don't even get a laser option anymore, but funnily enough, on this weapon I don't really care. With a sight, hollow point ammo and the short barrel, more on that in a second, this thing blows the pistols out of the park. Be aware though that because we don't have any muzzle attachments, just like on the trait a second ago, you will definitely be spotted while using this. Hence why it's even better if we only have to shoot once or twice, which is usually enough for this weapon. Convenient, isn't it? But why short barrel and not extended? And why not a higher zoom optic? Well, the velocity is pretty bad anyway, and for the one-shot range, 21 meters, you don't need it. Beyond that, I wouldn't use this weapon. If your enemy is more than 21 meters away, you might as well just reload your primary. So this revolver is for inside 21 meters. And for that range, I don't need a scope. Also, big scopes just block more of your screen, which can be annoying. And another reason for the short barrel is that I mainly hipfire this weapon. Now you might be wondering how that aligns with the headshot approach. Well, it doesn't. At least not consciously. I aim for the body, and because the hipfire is this good, you will land those headshots by luck, and more often than you'd think. And the 2-shot is still reliable enough for most situations. Obviously, if you do have great aim, might as well go for the headshots in the first place. You do you. Time to rank. The M44 is clearly my favorite pick among all of these options, and even though the M357 trait is technically better for the real close ranges, I just have more fun using this one. Landing those headshots feels so nasty and rewarding, you don't really want to miss out on that. Obviously the lack of attachments kind of downgrades this weapon, but different to the pistols, the base performance you get here is so good you can at least accept those downsides. Of course I would prefer having options for a fast reload, muzzles and lasers, but it still works fine without all of that. So in my opinion, the M44 fittingly deserves a spot in A-. It's really good for a sidearm, but there is certainly still some room left towards the top. And I still wouldn't want to use this as a primary. I had the most fun with it using it like that compared to the other ones, that's for sure, but context is key. More fun than no fun is still not a lot of fun. Closing thoughts. If it were up to me, pistols should get 100 points too. Multiple attachments need to be rebalanced cost-wise, some of them need more attachments in general, and if you ask me personally, right now, I would only recommend using the M45A1, M357 trait and the M44. Don't waste your time with the rest, it's not fun. If you are forced to because of your level or something else, use the P18. It's the least shitty one. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know how you like this new multiple weapons in one video format. And that's it for today. Thank you for your time and I will see you on the battlefield. Sorrow out.